This PowerPoint covers interest rate compounded several times a year, so we're going to talk about nominal rate, periodic interest rate calculations. What happens when an annual interest rate is applied several times a year? Like every 3 months, every week, every month, and that's usually with credit cards. So what they'll do is they'll give you an annual interest rate, but it's compounded monthly, meaning it's every month. When an annual interest rate is compounded several times a year, we call this a nominal rate. Here are some capitalization periods. So, for example, interests can be calculated annually, meaning once per year, semi-annually, 2 times a year, quarterly, 4 times a year, monthly, 12 times a year, weekly, 52 times a year, daily, 365 times a year. Those numbers that I just gave you, like going with the semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, daily, weekly, those are called capitalization periods. So that number is a capitalization period going with that term. You're already familiar with what the letter I means. We've seen it as interest rate, and it's always in decimals. When annual interest rate is compounded several times a year, we call it the nominal rate, J. The capitalization period that's based on the numbers that I gave you in last slide is called M. When we have a periodic interest rate, we calculate it as I equals J over M, where J is the annual interest rate and M is the capitalization period. J will be the decimal form of the interest rate, which you've been used to already changing. You are familiar with the compound interest formula. C of t is equal to CO times 1 plus I to the power of n. N was always the number of years in years, right? You had to convert things in years. Because we are compounding several times a year, we will change n as m times t, where m is the capitalization period, same one as from the last 2 slides, and t is the number of years that the capital is invested. So, in general, now that we've changed our I and our n from our compound formula that looked like this, our new formula, when our question says it's compounded several times a year, will look like this. C of t is now equal to CO times 1 plus j over m to the power of m times t. Here's an example. David invests $2,500 at an annual interest rate of 10% compounded quarterly. Calculate the future value of the capital after 3 years. Before we move on though, note that the question uses a capitalization period quarterly. That's how you know when to use that formula. So let's fill in some blanks. Your C of O, your nominal rate, your M, and your T. Well, your C of O is $2,500 because that's your initial capital. Your nominal rate, the one that's being compounded, is 10%, so we're going to change it to 0.1. Your M, well, it's quarterly, and quarterly means 4, and your time, meaning after how many years, is still going to be 3 years. So now that we have all of our letters, we can just plug it into our formula. So we have 2,500 times 1 plus 0.1 over 4 to the power of 4 times 3. And then you have something that looks like this. So it's to the power of 12, which makes sense because 4 times a year for 3 years it's being compounded 12 times. Our final answer is that after 3 years, we'll have $3,362.22. And in general, since you started with $2,500, you have accumulated $862.22 of interest. So now that we've pretty much covered everything of financial math, let's just review. We've done logs, so you know that log base A, or the change of base formula, so log of A of base AB is equal to log of B over log of A. You also know that when you have some kind of equation, A to the x is equal to B, to solve for x, you do log of b over log of a. You've been introduced to the simple interest formula where C of t is equal to CO times 1 plus just I times t. Your compound interest was the same thing, except instead of I times t, it'll be 1 plus I to the power of t. You also know how to calculate compound interest with years and some other unit of time O, like in months or in weeks. You do C of O times 1 plus I to the power of t in years times 1 plus I times O, whatever was given to you in months, days, weeks, whatever. And finally, you are now introduced to compound interest several times a year. CO times 1 plus J over M. So J is your nominal, M is your capitalization, to the power of M times T, where T is the number of years. And that is the end of our unit on financial math.